Hi, everybody. Dr. William Davis here again, cardiologist and author of the Wheat Belly series of books, as well as the more recent Super Gut. Now, I'd like to reiterate or reemphasize something very important for skin health and beauty. I've been talking a lot about skin health and beauty because I've been involved with some clinical trials where we're trying to improve skin health and appearance, specifically dermal collagen, reduction of wrinkles, by working from the inside out. That is, not applying things topically to the nearly impenetrable epidermis, that's the outer layer of skin, but by accessing the dermal layer of skin just beneath the epidermis, because it's the dermal layer where a lot of action occurs. That's where collagen is produced. That's where fibroblast cells produce other components of skin. That's the layer of skin that determines whether or not you're going to have wrinkles. There is some participation by the epidermis, but it's access to the dermal layer of skin that gives you the greatest power. Well, how do you access the dermal layer of skin? Well, you could do it by injection, but a much happier, nicer way to do it, and less expensive, is to do it orally. That is, restore factors largely absent from the modern experience that, when they are restored, increase the appearance, they improve the appearance of skin health and beauty, such as skin color, texture, smoothness, moisture, etc. One very important factor in generating better skin that's not often talked about is to include fermented foods in your daily routine. Ingestion of fermented foods. These are foods like kefir, kimchi, yogurts, preferably ones you make at home, not the stuff you buy in the store filled with all kinds of awful additive ingredients. Fermented pickles, vegetables you ferment on your kitchen counter. There are many ways to do this, and it should be very inexpensive and very easy. If you don't know how to do this yourself and would like to, refer to my Super Gut book, and I show you how to ferment various foods. For instance, tomatoes or sliced red onions or mushrooms. You can ferment all kinds of things. It's very easy, it's very inexpensive, but there's a few steps to be aware of in doing that. Well, why would consumption of these fermented foods be good for your skin? Well, it's a bit convoluted, but bear with me. So you consume, let's just say, some kefir, or maybe some kimchi or sauerkraut. By the way, if you purchase commercially fermented foods, make sure they're indeed fermented. Most sauerkraut, for instance, is not fermented. It's just cabbage in brine and vinegar. You want one that's been fermented. It should say something like live cultures or fermented. It'd be a little more expensive than the brine forms because it takes extra time and work to make a fermented vegetable. So they will almost always specify on the label that it is fermented or has live cultures. If you do buy a commercial product, consider leaving it on your kitchen counter for an additional 48 hours or more to let it ferment longer, because part of commercial production is to go as fast as possible, right? For maximum revenue and profitability. So you can extend fermentation by leaving it on your kitchen counter. Because the microbes in most fermented foods, like those vegetables, sauerkraut, kimchi, etc., are room temperature fermenting microbes. This is distinct from some of the other microbes we play with, like Lactobacillus reuteri, that is a human body temperature fermenting microbe. It will not reproduce properly at room temperature. So what we're talking about now are foods like sauerkraut and kimchi that ferment at room temperature, around 70, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. So the microbes of fermentation, of room temperature fermentation in those foods, are species like Leuconostoc mesenteroides or Pediococcus pentasaceus. You don't need to remember that, okay? And many others. Well, you consume, let's say, some of that sauerkraut or kimchi, you get those microbes. Well, interestingly, those microbes do not take up residence in your gastrointestinal tract. They simply pass through. But in their passage through the entire 30 feet of your gastrointestinal tract, they somehow, by an uncertain mechanism, cause the proliferation of beneficial species. These are species that are different, like Fecalibacterium and Akkermansia and Ruminicaceae and Eubacterium. Don't remember that. Just know that these are microbes cultivated by the ingestion of fermented foods, and these microbes produce something called butyric acid. It's a fatty acid. It's a fatty acid that mediates many of the beneficial effects of fermented foods, such as deeper sleep, loss of weight, loss of abdominal circumference, reduction in blood sugar and blood pressure. But relevant to skin, the butyric acid acidifies the skin. Healthy skin is mildly acidic. unhealthy skin is less acidic. So if we were to test the pH, for instance, of someone who's experiencing acne or seborrhea or rosacea or psoriasis, their pH is going to be something like 5.5. Someone who has healthy skin without those rashes typically has a skin pH of 4.5. Now recall that the pH scale is logarithmic, and that reduction from 5.5 to a more acidic 4.5 represents a 10-fold increase in acidity. So it's a very dramatic effect. So that butyric acid created by proliferation of those beneficial species in your gastrointestinal tract produces butyric acid with many beneficial effects, including acidification of the skin. When the skin is made more acidic, it's healthier and it looks healthier because acidic skin discourages the proliferation of unhealthy microbes, such as, you've heard of this, Staphylococcus aureus, right? A very common pathogen. And encourages the proliferation of the protective species Staphylococcus epidermidis. So there's an actual shift in the microbial composition of skin when it becomes acidic. So let me run through that real quick. That's a kind of a convoluted pathway, isn't it? We're going to consume fermented foods like kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, and ones you ferment yourself. And you don't know how, see my Super Gut book on all the recipes and some other great resources I list in the book for how to do this very easily, inexpensively. You consume those fermented foods. They in turn cause proliferation of beneficial species in your gastrointestinal tract that are good at producing butyric acid. And the butyric acid, among its many beneficial effects, goes to the skin, acidifies the skin, and shifts the microbial balance into a much healthier composition, favoring good species and discouraging unhealthy species. So there you go. This is how fermented foods can benefit your skin health and appearance. But you want to do this every day, and ideally several times per day. Small servings of those fermented foods every day. Just make it a habit. Every time you sit down for a meal, have a little bit of fermented food with that meal.